Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Kirby's Dream Land 3. In the last part, we entered the Iceberg and did most of the levels in it, and now we're in the final main level of the game, which has probably the most intense normal level theme a Kirby game's ever had. And this is an interesting mission to do. I'm taking Ku with me for it because he's just my favorite animal buddy, but we have what is very similar to one of the final levels in Kirby's Dream Land 2, a boss rush going on here. We're going to have several rooms that have enemies, be they the mini-bosses that have certain abilities, or enemies that have those power words otherwise, and we need to suck them up and get their abilities. Why? After every room like this, we're going to have a room like this instead. And in it is a feather. We need to get all of the feathers in this level to get the Heart Star. Now, starting off, this level is not too bad. In fact, our first mini-boss is against the stone one, who, if you have the spark with Ku, is probably the easiest one to fight. But all of the future fights after this one that are actual boss fights are going to be sped up roughly 7 times just in the interest of time. Particularly the Parasol mini-boss, because that fight takes me way too long. This is probably one of my favorite levels in the game, though, because it's straightforward to the point, and it doesn't last too long unless a certain fight takes you a bit longer than it probably should. And there's also plentiful healing items. In terms of the song we're going to be using for the boss rush speed-ups, this is Fire the Blaster Rifle, which is the first dungeon theme from Blaster Master Zero. Again, love that game and its soundtrack. Oh my god, it's so good. The Parasol here, though, it took me longer than I'd like to admit. I was here for about 4 or 5 minutes for dumb reasons. I was missing all my shots, and he was being very uncooperative as well, doing his little invincible attack way too much. Thankfully, I did beat him eventually. We need to suck him up and become Parasol. Which, again, with Ku, probably the best Parasol attack we'll ever see. Thankfully, all of the other mini-bosses didn't take me quite that long. Heck, fast-forwarded, I think one of them was like a second. Which, kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I'd rather have this kind of boss rush in a game like this than one against all the actual bosses, which could take like 20 minutes. I still think probably one of the worst boss rushes I've ever done, though, in any video game ever is probably Mega Man X7. Because counting load times on the PS2 version, that could take you upwards of 20 minutes. And, that's no good. Now we need to get Cutter. You can tell that some of the normal enemies are here, like the normal Spark guys and the Cutter enemies, purely because they didn't have a mini-boss for that specific subset of enemy, which is kind of weird. Maybe they couldn't think of one, or they didn't want to recycle a certain boss from earlier games. I don't know. Once you get to around this phase, though, they really start getting easy because the power-ups you get are so much better for fighting enemies that, the mini-bosses rather, that it becomes pretty trivial. With that said, though, this song is, ominous. With good reason, mind you, because we're coming towards the end of the game, and this is a fairly ominous setting. We're just climbing a tower, and well, just getting closer to the top of it. This is, I believe, actually the tower that is seen on the world map screen for this level. And, technically speaking, the final boss is at the top of it. I am not entirely sure what kind of boss rush I prefer in games. I think it just depends on the kind of game it is, because sometimes I like this and the Mega Man 1X1 sequential boss rush where you go through and you just do it as you go. And sometimes I prefer the capsulized version that X2 onwards had, Mega Man 2 onwards had, Devil May Cry 3 had. It's a weird per game case. Either way, this angel is who we got the feathers for, and that is our last Heart Star. What do the Heart Stars do now that we have them all? You'll find out in about 5 minutes, so somewhere around that line. With that said, time for the boss of Iceberg. What a surprise, it's Dedede. With another really good remix of Dedede's theme. This is like the one Kirby song that is immortal to never be ruined. It cannot be ruined at all. No matter what sound font it's in, it's fantastic. Dedede is honestly the hardest boss in the game because his attacks are not only the most random, but also the hardest to predict because he doesn't really have many tells for what he's going to do, except for maybe when he runs towards you. The first phase here is almost identical otherwise to what it was back in Kirby's Dream Land 1 and 2, I believe. He loves jumping around, tries to suck you towards him, rather, and uses his hammer. One thing you do need to look out for, though, those blocks in the background and the ones on the side are actually there and can be used as platforms. So you might end up getting stuck on a platform you're not meaning to. I think it's generally just the ones around the corners, but I swear the one in the center can also be jumped on. And he's about done, or at least that's what you'd think, but, what? Well, we got a second phase here, and it's a little disturbing. Because now this happens. Ugh. We need to shoot these little black balls at Dedede during the middle of his attacks. Obviously, if you bring a power up for this fight, you can just attack him with it. But what you're supposed to do is use these black balls of darkness. Oh god, that is gruesome. This specific fight would later get referenced in Kirby 64 during the Dedede fight fairly early in that journey. Honestly, though, this is probably like top 3 Dedede fights in the series. I think my overall favorite, from what I've seen of it, is probably the masked Dedede fight from Triple Deluxe. But this fight's still pretty fun. Enough pattern recognition that it's not easy, but how do I describe it? Difficult enough to still have a challenge to it while not being overly brutal for the difficulty curve. That's probably the best way I can summarize it. You do need to get good at timing your jump star shots, though, because if you don't master shooting out stars at a good angle, it can be kind of tough to hit them. Either way, that's all of the main 5 levels. However, you may notice on the world map screen, the darkness has slowly been getting cleared over Popstar, but there's still that thing in the center. That is what getting all 24 heart stars does for us. It allows us to access the true ending of the game. I believe if you didn't have all 24 at this point, you'd just access a bad ending of sorts. It's not really worth talking about, honestly. So let's just head on over to the true ending in level 6. Hello, Dark Matter. Haven't seen you since the last game. Dark Matter, the final boss of Dreamland 2, has returned to us, and his first phase is damn near identical to what it was in Dreamland 2, only with a couple extra attacks like this where he sends out his little balls at us. Phase 1, honestly, is really easy because the Heart Staff we get, is what I think it's called, from getting all the Heart Stars, will destroy most of the attacks he throws at you aside from the lightning. Best way to go about this, stay parallel to him and mash the attack button. It's a very easy first phase with a trippy-ass background, but awesome music. I don't think I've ever seen a Kirby game where the final boss theme was underwhelming. It's ridiculous how good the final boss tracks are in this series. I also believe the lightning bolts, yeah, as we just saw there, don't reach all the way across the screen unless that was just the frame rate being weird with me, which honestly I could see Camtasia doing. Once we take down Phase 1, though, we're treated to another phase just like Dreamland 2 and 3. Okay, it looks like it does go across the entire screen, actually. And Phase 2 is interesting. He goes from being Dark Matter into something entirely different. Meet Zero. Another really awesome boss theme and a very creepy design. The way this boss fight works is that it turns more into a bullet helly kind of thing, where instead of going around various parts of the screen, Zero will stick to usually the right side of the screen, I think he can stick on the left side as well, and fire out miniature dark matters at us. That's his main attack. However, he'll also bleed at us, which, disturbing. Honestly, this phase I think is overall easier because of his larger hitbox. He also doesn't attack as often as Dark Matter, and thus is more open to attack. Doesn't mean it's not climactic, though, because this thing, it's such a simple design, but there's something about it that's just very unsettling. I'm not sure if it's better to stay close or stay far away with this boss fight, though, because I think his invincibility frames are the same no matter the distance. I can see this fight causing issues with seizures, though, because this is kind of flashy, and those foreground circles actually hurt my eyes a little bit. You might think you're done at phase 2, though. However, time for something kind of brutal, all things considered, for the Kirby series. Jesus, that's a lot of blood for a Kirby game. Phase 3 is honestly the easiest phase, because the eyeball is just trying to get you. I think it's one shot for one health bar. Just don't let it touch you, and you're good. I wouldn't be surprised if when it touches you, it's instant kill, but I don't think I've ever gotten touched by this phase. But either way, that's game, ladies and gentlemen. And, kind of abruptly, admittedly, that's Kirby's Dream Land 3. It's okay. I do think Kirby's Dream Land 1 and 2 are more approachable games, and only do the more condensed level nature in the terms of length, but also because I think the structure isn't as, how do I describe this? Not intrusive, but major, I suppose? Because while I like the Heartstar mission structure of the game, I feel as if it takes a bit too much time in the actual levels to do some of the stuff. You know what I mean? It requires a certain level of patience to get them all, which I can admire. But I think when it comes to getting stuff in order to get a true ending in a Kirby game, at least, I think it should require not easier to get items, but less items. Like the rainbow drops in Dreamland 2 were probably the definitive way for a Dreamland game to do that in my eyes, because there were so few of them, there was only one in the world, and finding it was a bit more difficult, yes, but it was also a bit more explorative, I guess is the term I'm looking for. It's hard to explain. Overall, Dreamland 3 is a game I'm very ambivalent towards. I don't dislike it, but I also don't love it. It's a great looking game for the Super Nintendo. I know I gushed about that a lot. It really is graphically gorgeous for the system. But that's the most I think it has really going for it. However, I should mention that at this point, if you take a look after the credits and you've done everything I have, you'll notice that your file is only at 97%. That's because you're technically not done. If you go onto your file and select the options menu, you'll have a few little letters for you. I think it's M, J, and B. Those are your last 3 percentage marks. The M is a mini-boss rush, I believe. No. M is a mini-game rush. You have to do all of the 5 mini-games throughout the 5 worlds in a row and get all 15 right, I believe, in order to fully pass it. B is a mini-boss rush. I think it's also just a boss rush in general. And J is the only one I'm going to be showing off because it's technically the only one that's entirely new. And even then, entirely new is stretching it a bit. And the only reason I'm showing it off is because, like Choo Choo, basically, in Kirby's Dream Land 2, it's the one that's kind of, in terms of how you're supposed to figure it out, I suppose. Because you can't get it in the main stages. Also, that is probably one of the cutest Kirbys I've ever seen in my life. Oh my god. Also, Satoru Iwata. Rest in peace, good sir. No, that's probably the best way I can describe Dreamland 3. Adorable, but fairly skin deep, I suppose. I do admire its pros, but the cons make it not worth really going back to in my eyes. It's probably the Kirby game I've played the least out of the ones I actually have played, at least. But if you want to play it, it's on the Super Nintendo, it's on the Dream Collection, I think it's on some of the Virtual Consoles. If you're a Kirby fan, I guess I could recommend it. Not as much as Dreamland 1 or 2, but I like it enough. Because that's the thing with Kirby, there really are no bad Kirby games per se. There are lesser Kirby games, but none of them are outright horrible. Either way, I think once the end shows up, when Addo paints it, we're going to be fading over to the jump minigame just so I can show that off. It's not a very climactic way to end things, I suppose, but it's the best way I can figure out how to do it. Way you do it, select the file, go to options, and here they are. You got a music test, but we're here for jumping. In terms of what jumping is, you get to choose either Kirby or any of the animal buddies we had along the way. I'm just going to go with Kirby. And we have Gourmet Race playing over the end of stage minigame. The way it works, land on the smiley faces and you continue on. Land on the little spinies and you don't. In order to get that last percentage mark, you need to get 10 consecutive victorious jumps. And starting off, this minigame isn't that hard actually. For the first 5 or 6, there's plentiful smiley faces to land on, and the timing is fairly forgiving. Once you get to the last 3 or 4, though, it starts getting a bit more strict. I mean, there's a difficulty curve to it. There's always more and more spinies. But around this point, it starts getting kind of ridiculous. The last 2 or 3 in particular, I think, are very strict in that I think there's only 1 smiley face per. Like so. This is very difficult to do. Especially when you somehow end up doing the same jump twice in a row. However, when you're finally successful, the game doesn't automatically end. At this point, this was my 12th attempt. Not for the actual attempt numbers, that was just how many jumps I had done. I think to actually do this, it took me about 20 minutes. And once you've done that, you're at 100%. And in terms of what that gets you, you get a question mark on your option screen, which is basically just an option to view all the cutscenes again. It's very minor, but hey, at least it's something, I suppose. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. I don't know what the next Kirby game I'm going to look at is. It's probably going to be Superstar, honestly. Superstar Ultra in particular. But, yeah, that time will come eventually. See you guys then.